follow what the city of Gonzales does. They've been doing it, and we just kind of doing it at the same time, so there's not a lot of confusion. They have different hours. There'd be people leaving the city to come to us or leaving us to go to the city. So I'm proposing that we adopt October 31st from 6 to 8 p.m.
Second.
Motion by Dow Waggisback, second by Chase Melanson. Any objection?
Oh, that's the whole parish, right?
Yes, the whole parish.
Okay.
Okay.
You see, you mentioned Gonzales.
The sheriff comes and knocks on your door? No. Okay.
We're gonna have to make sure we have a look.
Any objection? There being none, that motion carries. Item B, approval of waiver of sewer development fee for Plaza 61, I'm sorry, Wolfpack Construction LLC due to privately owned on-site sewer treatment system. Bill Dawson, is he here?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Chase to approve, second by Dempsey. Discussion.
Mr. Quinmore, yes, sir. For clarification, is this our normal practice and procedure?
Yes, this has been the normal practice and procedure since.
For the renewal of the contract between Jeff Diaz and the parish to provide legal advice, advisory opinions, counsel, and legal assistance to the parish president and the staff and administrators of the executive office, as well as the council or individual council members on an as-needed basis, on-call as-needed on-call basis.
Motion to approve.
Got a motion by Councilman Melanson, second by Councilman Mason.
Mr. Capuati?
Councilman Orgeron.
If it pleases the council, at our last meeting, we had discussion over the necessity of having additional access to attorneys for the members of the council. And I was reminded, I think it was Councilman Lawler, that we placed that in our budget, that there would be $60,000 put aside for council members having access to an attorney. So what I'm asking for is an amendment to this particular business, increasing the $60,000 limit to a $90,000 limit to give more access for individual council members to get legal opinion.
Okay, is that in form of an amended motion?
It's forming an amended motion. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
I have an amended motion for the council to adjust that $60,000 to a $90,000 contract with Jeff Diaz. I got a second by Joel Robert.
I might object.
Sorry,
I'm gonna object.
you abstain?
I'm going to object to the amendment.
You're going to object to the amendment?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have an objection to the amended motion. Roll call vote, Madam Secretary.
Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
Councilman Robert.
Yes.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Councilman Orgeron.
Yes.
Councilman Lambert.
Yes.
Councilman Melanson.
No.
Councilman Lawler.
Yes.
Councilman Waggisback.
Yes.
Councilman Mason.
No.
Chairman Cagnalotti.
Yes.
You only had 2 nays.
All right, we got, the motion carries, so the amended motion carries, will be a $90,000 contract. All right. Moving along. Item E, resolution to request that the Board of Commerce and Industry not penalize Mauser USA LLC and Talon Industrial LLC for failing to meet performance requirements in job creation and payroll. Kate MacArthur, welcome, Kate. Nice to have you.
Thanks. So this is a little bit of a different ITEP request tonight. So our very first ITEP project that came after the governor changed the rules of the program was Mauser and Talon. So this happened in 2017. A little bit of history for those that may not have been here when we did this resolution. Essentially, when I started, this project was already in process. They were working with the state. They came and they were actually supposed to be under the previous rules, which was 100% for 10 years. They did not get their paper in, I guess, by the time the governor had changed his executive order, so they fell under the new rules. So when we did their exemption request, we had not had a formal process yet adopted in the parish. So there was really no guidance from the state. There wasn't much guidance on our side as we were still trying to figure out what this meant for each board and how we were going to handle these as we move forward. So we kind of, just went with, let's put the numbers together, let's do it and move through. So what has happened now is they had, the first year was 2018 of operations, and they were required to have at least 25 employees per their contract. So what most contracts have is a ramp-up period, so that by year 3, they have the full employment that they're expected to employ in the project, and year 1 and 2 is a lower number that's reaching to that final number. So this contract started out at full employment. So they actually had 23 employees in 2018, so they just missed the mark. But the way that LED calculates qualified employees came back with 17. So the way that they do that is based on hours, based on residents, based on if they were employed the full year from January to December. So if you were to have an employee that leaves at any point, you can backfill that position, but they need to be backfilled by the date you file your compliance paper, or else there is no employee calculated for that whole year. So because of those issues, they didn't qualify in 2018. They were again 23 employees in 2019 instead of 25, and they actually counted 23 by the state. And then in 2020, they had 26 employees, but the state only calculated 22. So they just missed the mark on that year as well. They are the only facility in Ascension that does injection blow molding, so they create industrial bulk containers, which is interesting and different for our manufacturing landscape. They hire workers right out of high school, which is very exciting for us since most of our jobs are later career positions that require a significant amount of experience. And they hire them at a decent salary, a range that not a lot of jobs offer here.
I make a motion to propose a resolution to not penalize.
Second.
And a motion to adopt the resolution by
Second.
Robert, second by
I
Coach.
do have one question for Ms. Kate.
Discussion.
So what would be the penalties under the 2017 ITEP before we change it?
So the penalty is typically if the Commerce and Industry Board does not receive any type of guidance, and sometimes even if they do, they usually penalize the 1 year that is non-compliant. So in this case, they would take 3 years of their exemption away. And what you guys would be voting on is recommending that they don't penalize them. So they still actually have the ability to do what they want to do, but typically they'll follow what the locals recommend.
Do we have a dollar amount on what that 3-year?
I don't have it with me. It's a very small contract overall. It's only a $11 million project, so it's roughly around $1 million.
I'm just curious, because this is the first time that we've had a ITEP participant not fulfill their goals.
And hopefully
So
we
it's kinda
don't
new.
have more.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's
And
it.
we do have Daryl, which I would like to introduce. Daryl is the plant manager at Mauser, so he is here tonight to answer any questions as well.
Coach.
Mr.
Hunter,
Hunter,
how you doing?
nice. Glad to have you. The position on what would it take to get some people hired going forward?
Currently, right now, we're in pretty good shape. We have 36 employees. We're scheduled to meet the budget without a doubt. So right now, we are in good shape. But economy definitely plays a part in it, but right now, we're in great shape.
So would it be possible that we can put in, or someone can put in an application prior to them being hired, in case someone drop out or somebody quit or somebody leave? Or
Yes. So right now, we currently use Mauser as a recruiting team.
Mm-hmm.
We also have an Aerotech team that's based out of New Orleans, and we have a local LED that actually does recruiting for us as well through their website. So right now, we have a backlog of applications that we keep on file in case something happens. We bring them in, we train them, and go from there.
the office this is in Gonzales?
The plant is in Geismar.
Geismar?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Councilman Ogeron.
Thank you. Kate, and I may need the gentleman back as well, depending. You're telling us that the penalty would be approximately $1 million, but we don't know the number for certain at this stage, right?
No, I would have to calculate out the parish's
Certainly.
percentage.
Is there any issue with maybe tabling this to our next meeting so that we can, is there any time scheduling that requires this to be done at this meeting? Or can we table it for the next so we can get that figure so that we know exactly how much money is being asked of us to essentially give back?
So the deadline for the recommendation is October 14th.
No.
So
Ugh.
it would have to be a special meeting in order to.
See, 'cause
Table
you're kind of putting us in a tough spot. I don't want to, I see they tried, but a contract is a contract, and, the public, the citizens need improvements. We have roads, we have bridges, we have drainage, we have education, we have all these issues, and money is scarce. And this program was put aside for that purpose, to encourage them, if you meet these goals, you get these benefits, and they failed to do so. Coming to us a week before the deadline kind of puts us in a spot, and not knowing what that penalty is puts us in even a greater spot. Thanks. I think
I have a question. With this, seems like 2 of the years they struggled to meet the requirements, the getting started year, and then 2020 and I imagine 2019, 2020, but how big of an impact did COVID have on this, especially on the number of employees?
So COVID had a large impact because they were required to stay home for 2 weeks if they were exhibiting any symptoms. And so if they were not working, they were not getting paid, and so that counted against them as being considered as full-time employees as well.
Any further discussion? Councilman Lawler.
Yeah, most of my questions have already been asked, but the actual payroll portion of it, I'm looking at that number. We have a required payroll and then actual payroll, if you see what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Even with a higher number of employees, the payroll isn't going up. And, I mean, is that one of the requirements? They have a certain payroll?
Correct. So those are the two aspects, is both the number of employees and the amount of total payroll. The other issue that came up was chronic electrical outages. So in 2021 alone, they had 8 power outages, and there was more in 2020. And every time they have an outage, their blow motor goes down for 3 hours, and some of these outages lasted longer than a day. So when they were not operational, no employees were getting paid either. So that significantly impacted their business. And we did bring Entergy in. They did an audit. They're trying to fix the substation, but the problem is the grid they're on is all warehouses for the most part, so they can run off generators, but their equipment can't run off of a generator. So they're the only one, so Entergy doesn't necessarily make the largest improvements in that case.
I have another question. Anyone else?
Yeah, but as far as like just so I understand this correctly, as far as being a permanent full-time employee, that's something that's specified by the Department of Labor or these contracts?
It's specified by the contract. So it has to be 30 hours a week, you have to be domiciled in Louisiana, and it has to be for a full year.
So these contracts don't have any sort of exception for illness or that sort of thing? I mean, in most places, you can be a full-time employee, but if you get ill and you miss a little bit of time, you're not reduced to a part-time employee.
No. So their compliance, it's typically why people commit to a lower number of employees so that they meet their compliance and they don't come out starting off operations January 1 of their first year with a full set of employees, because they know it's going to take a little while to work out the kinks and the turnover.
And going back to the penalty portion of this, is it just an absolute penalty that you don't meet it? You get the 100% of it, is what, that's $1 million. That's the 100% penalty, or do they ever do you didn't meet it by this percentage of employees, so we're going to reduce that tax exemption by this percentage. That would
So-
make a lot more sense if they did that.
They leave it in a way that it's somewhat open, that you could negotiate a payment sum in lieu of what has been given. But the way that the board's been handling these over the last year is there hasn't been a lot of input on that side, so they've just been going with this pattern of typically we just penalize for a year and then move on. So that's if there's no action. If there is a local response, then they take that into consideration, but I haven't seen anywhere they've changed the payment amount.
So we would have the option to say that instead of asking for a 100% exemption, we could ask for, say, like use these numbers, a 15% exemption. Or
I
a
haven't seen
90%.
anywhere that says you can't in the written rules.
That's the way to go.
Y'all can ask questions, I'm just
One other-
pondering.
I have a question, real quick. Says the accompanying resolution is requesting Board of Commerce and Industry to take no penalizing action for the 3 years of noncompliance. This resolution will be submitted as a recommendation to the Board of Commerce and Industry for consideration at their December 9th meeting. So this is just a recommendation.
Yes,
Is it also going to be presented to the sheriff and the school board?
yes.
Okay.
So
have
the
you done
school
that yet?
board has passed it with the recommendation of no penalty, and we're just waiting on the sheriff's response and letter, since he just sends a letter in.
Councilman Robert?
I like the way that Councilman Lawler was thinking there, and I would offer a substitute motion that we take each of the years and let's say whatever percentage they were off by their employee count, then we penalize the benefit by that percentage. So let's say they were off 7% year one, we penalize them by taking away 7% of their award.
My question is, if we amend this resolution, is that what's going to go forward, or do you say it's either this one or?
You can amend the resolution. It's just up to the Board of Commerce and Industry to decide if they're going to move forward with
Aaron, is that the way you,
That's what I was thinking. I mean,
Looking
I hate
like
to
a
penalize
percentage
somebody
type?
100% for something when obviously there was an effort, but by the same token, which I've heard a lot of other people say up here, these are funds that our schools require, and I know our schools are in desperate need of money. I mean, I know it sounds strange, they're doing really well, but they've got road projects that they need to help us on. They're trying to build a new high school. Every school board member that I've spoken with has said, we are short on money. These are also people that if they were working, they were in our parish, they'd be paying taxes towards our roads, and we're desperately short on roads and recreation. Even drainage doesn't have enough money. ITEP is a really big incentive, but if we're just giving away even more than what we're saying, what good is having a contract? I mean, when we have a contract, we should live by the contract. And yeah, I'd like to see us move in that direction. I was trying to do some math. It looks like they were hitting at approximately 85% of the time. So it would leave like a 15% penalty. But
and I would say assess that also to the salary.
that I was doing it based on payroll.
Okay.
Do we have a substitute motion from either of you?
We'll have a substitute motion.
Substitute motion from Aaron, or?
I made a motion, but to clean it up a little bit, we'll just, a substitute motion to offset the reward by what they were missing in hitting the expected point, or hitting the point, or whatever they're supposed to, their goal.
If I can make a point, I mean, Kate.
That was not cleaning it up at all.
Kate made the point earlier. I mean,
Sorry.
it's not that we don't want to minimize this or anything like that, but projects from an industrial point of view come to the parish in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars.
Mhm.
This total project was what, 11?
11 million.
11 million. So, they invested all they could, and this is what it's going to generate. It's
Oh, yeah.
basically $11 million investment. And, you know, I feel if we penalize them too much, they won't have any choice but to shut down and go away. And then I don't know that we want to chase them out, but there again, the rules are the rules. Councilman Mason.
I was about to say the exact same thing. I mean, we don't have a ton of businesses in Ascension Parish that are hiring high school kids and paying them a decent salary. I don't understand, like, this is not gonna hurt us that much. I mean, I understand we need money, I understand that, I get that. I'm on transportation, I'm on recreation, I understand how much we need that money, but we also need opportunities for the people that live in this parish. I mean, we have a lot of people that are going to Baton Rouge for opportunities, and that's creating traffic issues. So if we have something in-house that's hiring high school kids, that's paying them a decent livable wage, I don't see why we're trying to penalize this company for a few missed employees. Because, and another thing I want to make is, we've granted a lot of exceptions to a lot of developers, et cetera, for COVID and for things like that, but this time, this is where we're drawing our hard line in the sand. That's what I'm having a kind of issue with. So if I will object to the substitute motion.
Who did it first?
It doesn't matter. I was just going to say, I mean, first of all, if this was a $2 billion contract, you know, are we setting a precedent? Are we setting a precedent that, hey, if this is a $2 billion contract, the last time we let 15% go, are we going to let 15% on that one go? Are we not going to be treating, you know, we should be treating every company the same regardless of the size of the company. Just because you're a bigger company, does that mean we're going to penalize you when you don't meet your goals? Well, it's about treating people fairly, in my opinion. I'm not aware of any waivers that we're giving developers. I mean, if you are, well, I've always wanted it to be at 100%. And that's my concern, is we're going to set a precedent here. That the precedent is, okay, if it's a small company, we're just going to let it go. If it's a big one, well, what defines a small company? What dollar amount are we going to allow to give a waiver? We have a dollar amount that we're going to say, hey, if your company's this size, we're not going to enforce the rules, but if you're on this side, we're going to enforce them. If anybody can give me a dollar amount, I'll listen. Yeah, I mean, my point is that we have to look at it, not in a heartless way, but this is math, these are numbers. This has to be looked at from a business standpoint also. Businesses look at the numbers. You know, to me, it's a hard thing. We're not trying to put anybody out of business, but we got to make sure that people live up to their contracts.
Mr. King.
Councilman Robert.
The key word is precedent. And ITEP is a huge program that we offer. We don't want to start setting precedent in something like this. As far as chasing businesses off, whether it be a small business or a large business, if they're being chased off by something this fair, shame on them. Because if you're missing your benchmark, if you're missing your commitment, then you should expect some type of penalty. I think the fact that we're offering, instead of taking, say, $1 million from you, now we're only going to take $850,000. I mean, we're going to give you $850,000. We're only taking $150 from you, and that's way better. I mean, they should understand that, and it'll give them a better chance to reach their goals. It's not free money; it's money that's earned by the contract.
Councilman Orgeron.
I will clear up Councilman Robert's substitute motion, if allowed. I believe, based on the numbers that Aaron and Joel have suggested, I believe I would make a substitute motion that we issue a resolution to the board requesting that they reduced the exemption from 100% to 85%, and make that as a recommendation to the board. And that's allowing us to set up, to establish a precedent going forward, that if you don't make the goals, we're at least going to.
I'll withdraw my substitute motion,
Okay.
if you want to make that, and I'll second.
So that's my
I'll second that.
substitute.
Councilman Turner.
I just have, I guess, a quick question on it. So do they come up every year, or is it just?
So the noncompliance is annual, so they just were behind. So that's why all 3 years came at once to us. But each contract has the exact same language where you do have the rights to modify the terms and conditions should they be in non-compliance. So I don't know if you would want to consider it a precedent-setting event as much as each one, this gives the opportunity to understand why they're in non-compliance and get that story before making a decision, so that it should always be that each person is treated in the understanding of what's going on for their business.
I was just gonna, I mean, if the entire council is, I guess, I don't think everybody's on the same page, but as far as wanting to try to, some type of punishment, I'm sitting there trying to think the idea out while I talk it out, but instead of doing a percentage of the employees they may have missed, maybe year one is a warning. Year two, if they don't meet the standards, how about a 2.5%? Year three, if they don't, the second time you're in violation of it, it increases to 5% and so on until it gives them an opportunity to try to remedy whatever problem. And also, it's a smaller percentage, and it'll still be the same percentage for everybody. So, I think we can, those numbers might not be good numbers to use, but just the general idea, I think, year one, warning, year two, 2.5%, then double it the following year, and maybe 15% or whatever the year after that, just to try to incentivize them to get back into compliance. I don't know if, what y'all think about that.
I think if we started a little bit higher, I would agree to that, maybe 5% starting off, and then you go to
Mr.
your 10%,
President.
15% after. Give them the first warning, the first year.
So what I would say is, I would not worry about precedent, okay? That's the flexibility that this council has the ability to judge every situation and every case special. Factors are different in every situation. So to me, whatever you come up with, whether it's partial penalty, the full penalty, that's your right, and whatever that number is, I wouldn't worry about precedent, and that's really what I wanted to express, because y'all have the flexibility. ITEP is one of those things that provides y'all the flexibility per the circumstance. I will say that this is relatively a small business. 33 employees, under 100 is considered a small business. So with that knowledge, I said, any recommendation the board makes, I just want to say this, and this flexibility is something that is granted to y'all in every case. And again, this is going to go on to, the next board to decide, and they may be totally against it, but y'all do have that flexibility.
Sure. I just did a little math. You're looking 2% is a $20,000 fine. I'm good either way, honestly, but I think something of a $20,000 fine would be significant enough to put it out there. But if we're not worrying about setting any type of precedent. But I would still like to follow the same rules for each person beforehand, to have something to go off of. So I would be willing to support the 2% if y'all want to do that.
Councilman Lawler.
When it's really gets about us, we're getting it a week before we have to make a decision. That is not fair on us. It's up here trying to figure this out. We want to be fair to Bowser. We also want to be fair to every other company. We understand their COVID issues that they went through, that every company went through. Like I said, one of our concerns is if the numbers have gone up, employees, if the actual payroll has gone down, there can also be a sign of if they're paying less. We don't know what that is. We need to get this sooner. It's just like contracts that come up in the parish that they say, well, if you don't approve this now, we're gonna, we have to. That's ridiculous. We should not be in this situation that we have to either approve something or disapprove something because it's gonna be a case. That's just my 2 cents on that. We shouldn't be rushing on this. This is too important for people that work at Bowser. It's too important for our taxpayers to have to rush into something like this. Yeah, this is what we need. But because this is a resolution, could we also hear this at finance and have a little more time to think about it and parse the numbers?
We'd have time. I think that'd be a good idea.
Well, the thing about it is, if you defer it to finance, that meeting will be next week, but the next council meeting, which will be final approval, won't be until the 20th.
As long as special council meeting for right before or after finance, since we're all on finance committee anyway.
Councilman Wagsman.
Yeah, I was actually going to suggest that if this is supposed to come from the council, I think we'd have to do a special meeting before or after. I don't think it can come from the finance
From a
committee.
committee.
No. I'm good with
Just-
that. We also have drainage the next night, so
Yeah.
I vote for Tuesday night.
I want
Anyway.
Coach to be involved. You may not care about Coach being involved, but I want Coach to be involved.
Finance. Kate, just a quick, what were the school board's comments? Did it have any at all?
They just
Just
asked
curious.
some questions about some of the reasons of why it was non-compliant, but nothing major.
Councilman Turner.
This will be my last statement for the rest of the month. But, yes, the rest of the month. I'm just, kind of playing with it again. So, I know, are we going to vote on it tonight, or are we going to try to push it to next week, first of all? So,
Until a special meeting called before the finance committee.
second time they violated 2.5%, third time 5%, fourth time 15%, they violated the fifth time 25%, but put that at the cap. And then anytime they violated after, it's always at 25%.
That would be good for discussion if we have that meeting. So we have a motion to defer this or until,
I withdraw my previous motion.
okay. Previous motion withdrawn. The amended motion is to defer this until a special meeting called by the council, either before or after finance.
I can even withdraw
I'm looking for a second.
my original motion and make that the motion.
You already have. You already did.
Well, good, second.
You already did.
Got a motion? Got a second? Any objection? Got a second? Any objection? Being none, it's deferred.
That was good.
Item F, resolution to request that the Board of Commerce and Industry not penalize Sugarfield Spirits and Sugarfield Properties for the failure to submit an annual certification of compliance to LED by the deadline.
Is
Kate.
it the same deadline?
No, this is a different situation. So they met the jobs and the payroll per their contract. Their issue was their paperwork is due June 29th, and they submitted it by June 29th, but one of the columns in their Excel sheet had an error, so when they corrected it, resubmitted it, it was now accepted the day after, so they were one day late.
Motion, excuse that.
Motion to adopt the resolution.
Second.
Second by Joel, second by Corey. Any questions? Any discussion? Any objection? The motion carries. Thank you, Kate. Item 8, introduction of ordinances. Introduction of ordinance to amend the Unified Land Development Code Appendix, what is it, 19? 14. Subdivision construction specifications to add section 6.1, asphalt rejuvenator, emulsion of bituminous pavements. Planning Commission recommendation. Motion. Aaron, motion to introduce. Item B, introduction of an ordinance to amend the Unified Land Development Code Appendix 5, drainage, section 17-502.2, wetlands preservation, to require applicants or subdivision developers to identify all U.S. Corps of Engineers jurisdiction wetlands on first subdivision plats, and to require new applicants for new subdivisions to indicate all FEMA identified special flood hazard areas on preliminary and final subdivision plats. Motion by Joel Robert to introduce. Item 9, hearings and ordinance. Reading of an ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish Code of Ordinances, Chapter 15, Article 1, in general, lease pricing for recreational facilities to add 7 Ascension Gym. Kenneth, would you please read the ordinance?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Purpose, to amend the Ascension Parish Code of Ordinances, Chapter 15, Parks and Recreation, Article 1, Section 15-2, Parks Registry, Rules and Regulations generally, to amend F, lease pricing for recreational facilities, whereas the Charter of the Parish of Ascension, Section 6-01, requires an ordinance for all acts that regulate the rate or other charge for services provided by the parish, and for all amendments to those acts And whereas the Parish of Ascension is the governing and responsible body over Parks and Recreation, and whereas the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 15, Article 1, Section 15-2 was last amended on March 3rd, 2022. Now therefore be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Governing Authority that the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 15, Parks and Recreation, Article 1 in general, Section 15-2, Parks, Rules, and Regulations generally to amend F, lease pricing for recreational facilities, so more fully described in Exhibit A, attached here to and made a part hereof. Effective date, this ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. This ordinance having been submitted to a vote.
Motion to open
vote
public
as
hearing.
follows.
Motion to open public hearing by Councilman Robert, second by Councilman Lawler.
Motion to close public hearing.
Motion to close by Councilman Robert, second by Councilman Mason. Need a motion to move the ordinance?
I need to amend this ordinance real quick. We talked to, Mr. King talked to legal, and we need to actually change the verbiage to say from lease pricing to rental, because lease in turn, and like Councilman Lawler just told me, lease infers long-term, and these are gonna be short-term. So we gotta change it from lease to rental pricing for recreation.
Second.
An amended motion to the ordinance. Michael, second by Joel. Councilman Lawler.
This all understood, Michael. Do we have any regulations regarding the use of the wood floor gym? Because what I hear is absolutely gorgeous. And I want to make sure that if we let anybody just go in there and do whatever they want, do we have to rip it down, or how do we control that? I want to see them get a little bit personal.
Right, yeah, so we'll update our rules and policies for as that's going on, and we're gonna have staff on site with this too for a lot of these rentals, so that we're making sure that, you know, like you said, it's beautiful floor. We definitely don't want what goes on in some of our places to happen there, and we're trying to clean that up everywhere. So particularly there, we don't want a big table thrown down and scratching up the floor before we do that. So, and specifically to those leases that, or the rental that is on that is, it's for basketball, volleyball, whatever. It's not gonna be a typical rental space, so it'll be sport specific for that.
I cannot imagine Travis's face if he walks in, they're all like scraped up and
Yeah, we don't want
ripped and
that.
everything. That man would have a heart attack.
No cleats.
No.
Okay, good
He
deal.
looked to follow lawsuit. No. Okay. I need a motion to approve the amendment. I'm sorry, we did that.
Oh,
Now we need a motion to
Motion.
approve the ordinance as amended.
motion to
Second
approve.
by Aaron, second by Michael. Any objection? Motion carries. Item D, reading of an ordinance to amend an ordinance adopted on March 17, 2022, amending Section 16-1 of the Ascension Parish Code of Ordinance adopted by the Ascension Parish Council on June 20, 1996, adopting a pay classification plan to add the position of Deputy Chief Administration Officer. Kenneth, please read the ordinance.
Purpose to amend an ordinance adopted on March 17th, 2022, amending Section 16-1 of the Ascension Parish Code of Ordinances adopted by the Ascension Parish Council on June 20th, 1996, adopting a pay classification plan to add the position of Deputy Chief Administrative Officer. Whereas the Parish of Ascension through the Ascension Parish Council under lawful session passed an ordinance adopting an official pay classification plan, and whereas the original ordinance established a uniform system for reimbursing, promoting, and classifying Ascension Parish personnel, and whereas the plan was last amended on March 17, 2022, and is in need of further revision, and whereas the Human Resources Director has prepared a revision of the pay classification and plan, and whereas the Parish President has accepted the revised plan and proposed the revision to the Parish Council for review, now therefore be it ordained that the Ascension Parish Council does hereby authorize the amendment of the pay classification plan attached to Exhibit A, proposed by the Human Resources Department and submitted by the Parish President, and the position of Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, position description attached as Exhibit B. Effective date, this ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. The ordinance has been submitted to a vote. Vote thereon was as follows.
Motion to open the public hearing by Councilman Robert, second by Councilman Lawler. Motion to close the public hearing by Councilman Lawler, second by Councilman Robert. Motion to move. Any other comment?
I'd like to object.
Yeah, I object.
Michael?
Yep.
No, you want to make a substitute motion, or anybody? Mr. President?
So I imagine many of you got my email. We're working great as an administration as is. There was concerns with some supervisory rules that came to my attention. So I will not be filling this position. So you will be creating a position that will not be filled. Just for your information, if you would like to pass it for future administrations, so be it. But I will not be utilizing this particular title or position. Thank you.
Motion to table? No need to pass a motion.
I will make that motion to table since the past president clarified that he's not gonna.
Now, motion to table it,
Fill the position.
table the ordinance. Second. Any objection? There being none, motion passes. Motion to adjourn by Michael, second by Joel. We are adjourned.